Hello everybody and welcome back to Season 2 of Brewmasters, where we interview tabletop game designers to get their insights on the craft. This season we're going to be changing things up a little bit. You see, over the break I took in April, I reached out to a number of published authors behind some of my favourite TTRPG creations, and as luck would have it, some of them actually wanted to talk. However, it turns out that these are also busy people, and our interviews were on average only an hour compared to the lengthy 2-hour-long chats that I used to have with our D&D creators. So what you're going to see over this season is that although the conversations are shorter, we're going to be having a lot more of them, and our guests are going to be a much more varied mix, including friends of mine, big industry names, and of course the smaller community creators from the TTRPG community that we love to foster here on the show. Also, my first TTRPG Qualia is still coming along. The book design is hard at work getting that ready for publication, and I've started working on my second RPG, Cyberscape. But I'll be talking about that more in a separate series as I reach certain checkpoints and I go over how I've been making use of what our guests have taught me over the journey that we've been going through here. As I mentioned before, a lot of this stuff is just dependent on me doing the doing of it to do the doing of the thing that is the other thing. So I'll keep you updated as we move forward. Now back to the show. This week we're talking to Chris Taylor and Grant Howitt, the minds behind Spire RPG, Goblin Quest, Unbound, popular one-page RPGs like Honey Heist and Crash Pandas, and of course the founders of Rowan, Rook and Decard. Before we get to that though, I'm going to place a like button and summon a call to action. When this card enters play, you must tap the like button and subscribe directly to my channel. With that programmer move out of the way, let's get to it. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with us.
No worries. Is this the show?
This is it now, yeah.
Oh, we're in the show now. Okay, cool. Right, cool. I didn't know how cold the open was. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, congratulations on the new Kickstarter. I saw it got funded in like less than an hour.
Yeah, like 45 minutes. So honestly, this is a great distraction right now.
Yeah. Rather than just watching the number change. Number go up, but sometimes number go down.
And then sad.
That's the worst thing for a Chris to see the number go down. That's wretched for Chris.
Bad day.
Yeah.
Makes that emotional support animal worth the investment, though.
Always.
Did you get an emotional support animal you haven't told me about, Chris? What you got there?
Yeah, mate. This place is just lousy with sheep.
I've trapped a pony in my bedroom. And I tell it all my worries.
You can't go in there. There's a reason you can't hear it.
It's not well. I don't know what a pony needs to eat, but I don't think it's crisps.
I've hired a maid to clean up after the pony.
Looks like it's been possessed by a Victorian child.
You know, that happens more often than you think.
Well, you've got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You reckon it's easier to possess a horse or a person?
I reckon it's probably easier to possess a horse. Like, they've got a weaker will.
There's less room in there, and they're already mad.
They are a dangerous beast.
From what I know, you can fit at least 2 spirits in a horse.
Oh, great. One at the front, one at the back.
Yeah.
What, a paddock horse, yeah.
Imagine being the one having to be bent over for eternity.
Oh, that'd be rubbish.
Or be murder on the back.
It takes all sorts.
It does.
But yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to have you both. Obviously, you guys have just recently had Minerva join the team, I believe.
Yeah.
Mina's really going great guns. It's fantastic.
Yes. She's been working with us sort of unofficially since January, I think. And then we realised that we had to get all the legal paperwork sorted. No, we realised. The legal paperwork is quite a complex thing because not only are we employing her, but we're bringing her on, we're taking over her business as well.
Yeah, the merger of UFO Press.
Yeah.
Yes. They were keeping that as an imprint, so UFO Press still exists.
Yeah. But it's just a big funnel directed into our bank account. and that's the thing. And then out of that bank account, we pay Mina, so it kind of works out okay. But we realised that we had to say she laid out the new book, and as part of that, we had to say that she worked for us, and then as part of that, we had to sort of announce the merger. And so I think over the period of about 36 hours, we had to announce everything very quickly, like a sort of pachinko machine.
Yeah, because we'd taken over putting out Void Heart and stuff. I say we'd taken over, like, with Mina.
Yes, we're helping Mina do it.
Yeah, so it was all a bit of a rush, honestly.
Yeah.
So jumping through the business hoops.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and
the least
and-
exciting kind of hoop.
But what a complicated course.
Right? Oh, it's very strange trying to. I will say it's strange getting into like business, and I'm not like we're big business. I mean, we do okay for the roleplay industry. We do pretty well, but it is strange getting into the place where we're at. You know, we're acquiring companies, and we have like we're getting dangerously close to having a portfolio, and I put this. I put this business together primarily so Chris and I would have guaranteed money in exchange for writing books about wizards. And it's quite odd to sort of have a business happen out the side of that because of Mary, who's not on this call. Mary is our business brain.
Yeah, I was going to say she must have been integral in helping you get all this like navigation through the jungle sorted.
They have been absolutely Chris and I would be somehow living in each other's back garden.
Yeah.
Or like in a cardboard box outside the nearest Games Workshop. We would not be functioning properly. We do not have the business acumen which Mary has. So it's been tremendously useful to be married to a business genius, and I guess friends with a business genius in Chris's case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard from like Maychan Press a little while back about how difficult it can be going from a creator to a business owner because it takes up so much of your time that you don't get to do as much of the creating, apparently.
Yes.
And also, it's such a different skill set. Like, it's a completely different paradigm in your brain as to how you work. And that was the biggest thing for me. Like, I don't do admin. I'm terrible at it. I barely got a degree.
You have the least degree possible.
I have the least degree possible. I had to argue for a third.
You had to argue up to a third.
Yeah.
Which, like, in a way, proves that your philosophy degree worked.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it was an easy degree as well.
Yeah.
And now, like, there's forms. I'm signing legal documents. And
You've had to develop a signature rather than just doing an X.
yeah, just a thumbprint doesn't count.
It's strange to think that this is where we would be. Like 5 years ago, before we set this all up, we were interested in writing games in an abstract fashion, and I was putting out the role playing games, which were very scrappier even than the 1-page games I put out today. And over the last few years we've developed I don't like the word brand, but we've developed one, and we have a style. We have we've worked really hard to make high quality stuff, which we're excited to put out, and we're excited for people to play. And this is the first time that we've hired a bunch of different writers in to write a source book for us, because Chris and I we're trying to focus on the next thing after Spire, whatever that is. And so I say whatever that is, we're writing it. It's called Hollows, and it's about hunting monsters in post-industrial Sheffield. but
Amazing.
We figured, yeah, it's pretty cool actually. But we figured that it would be much more sensible rather than trying to write the book and also write the next book at the same time. We find people who understood Spire, who understood the world we're building and the tone, and hire them. And it was not a quick process or an easy process to put together that list of people, but it's been really rewarding being able to get in touch with some people who are like established. Kat Evans is an established writer who's done stuff for Studio 7 and put out some of their own stuff, whereas JP Bradley has written for us before, and he did 2 pages of work. But JP gets Spire in a way that very few people do. So even though his writing is he doesn't have a lot of experience at writing, he gets Spire, and it's like, okay, that counts for a lot. So it's been interesting trying to identify people who fit into the mindset.
Yeah, I think the best thing about having all these other people write for us, especially people who haven't necessarily done a whole lot before, is like we've seen people's dads retweeting our Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah.
And like that is the best feeling. I love that so much.
So we've got a writer called Cleo Kahana, who wrote a section in the religion section. Wrote a bit of the religion section, and their dad retweeted it saying, "My kid wrote this, please buy it." And I'm like, oh, good work, Cleo's dad. That's
Absolutely
lovely.
solid parenting. Very
That's
happy.
heartwarming. My dad doesn't know what a dice is.
Yeah, someone with a Luddite for a father, I can appreciate it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to see you guys are expanding and like bringing on new people. Like we've seen a little bit of that similar growth from Matt Colville with the Arcadia magazine that's been coming out recently. And he's been giving everyone a little bit of insight into how difficult it is to bring people on board and like the amount of trial and tribulation you go through on that. But yeah, it's another thing that's been coming out. And obviously rising tides raise all ships. So it's fantastic for the whole industry to be able to see more people reaching your heights.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's, there is definitely the capacity within the industry to run a successful business. I think that the opportunity which we were afforded is I moved around the world a lot with Mary, with my partner's work, which meant that I wasn't legally able to work in some of the countries I was in. And thankfully, we were bringing enough money that I didn't need to, so I was able to focus on this full time for a while. And I think one of the biggest struggles is, as with any sort of artistic or creative career, is having the time to put in when you're not trying to earn enough money to survive. And like we were both pretty lucky in terms of that, in that we had a basis that we could operate off. We were not starving to death. And we had the opportunity to write. So I wrote Goblin Quest, and Chris and I wrote Unbound together. And then, like from that that small fan base that we had there, we were able to do Spire. And then once we put a world out into the world, once we put out a universe, then people really started picking up on that, and it's been snowballing since then, which is very exciting.
So more and more people now getting from the sort of pipeline of going from a dungeon master to a home brewer to a full-on designer. Do you think that it's inevitable now on the sort of growth path that people will end up having to make their own sort of business and get incorporated at some point?
I don't think you necessarily need to get incorporated. It can certainly make things a lot easier when you start hitting limits of scale.
Yeah, tax.
But it's... I don't want to invalidate anything with this, but it's easier than you think to make money out of role-playing games. Like, there's this accepted wisdom that this is a hobby and you don't make money out of it. And that is utter bollocks. Like, you can make good money out of role-playing games if your ideas are good and you market them right. And there's a lot of people who are just like, no, it's a hobby. I'm not expecting to make any cash. No, make some cash. What you make is worth money. Your art is worthy. You could charge for it. You could charge the right amount for it. As long as people see the right value at the other end, then you get something back. And you can run that alongside another job. Obviously, it's an awful lot harder. Without needing to be incorporated, without needing to be a full business. But when you start pulling in bigger numbers, when you start wanting to live on your earnings, then you basically have to be incorporated. You have to be a business of some description just for tax reasons.
And legal reasons, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, like, it is... Right, doing this stuff for a job is very different from doing it for a hobby. And I've done both. I started off as a hobby, and then I think I started trying to not do it as a job, but trying to make money off this. It'd be about, oh God, Chris, when did I start? When I put a Goblin Quest on the Patreon, was it 2013?
Yeah, something
about
like
8 years ago. And like we didn't become profitable until, well, Spire pretty much. But when I used to do things, I used to spend hours and hours and hours like writing scenarios, and we used to run. So Chris and I used to run live games together as well. And so, like, I used to do a lot of LARPs. I used to do a lot of, like, we did. I did sort of what amounts to transgressive street theatre in Melbourne. we did a bunch of weird stuff, and that was before it was a business. That was when, like, I love doing this, and hopefully we can break even if we charge. And then now this is a job, and so I can't just sort of fuck about. I have we have deadlines to meet, and it's not just like if I don't write the background for my game on Thursday, that doesn't especially matter. But if I don't write the 1-page RPG, then we're down $2,500 in down about $2,000 in pounds that month, which means that we aren't hitting our sales targets, which means that me and Chris and Mina aren't as secure. And so there's a lot of responsibilities on there. There's a lot of it's very different, and I think that it's not for everyone. It is for me. I love it. I love writing books about wizards, but I think that in late stage capitalism there is this relentless encouragement to monetize your hobbies, to sort of be on that endless hustle all the time, and it is soul destroying to have everything must factor into capitalism in some way. Everything must make money for someone else or make money for yourself, which is why I make toy soldiers. I'm not brilliant at it. I'm quite good. Same with Chris, actually. Chris is a wonderful painter.
Thank you.
And the pair of us paint toy soldiers, and sure, we post pictures of them online and like it when people like them, but I am not at all interested in trying to do commissions or any sort of professional work out of that. That is something I can quietly be okay at on my own terms, and I think everyone needs that. And if role-playing games is that, if home brewing is that, if running D&D is that, then by all means keep that jewel, that gem of self-satisfaction, and don't tie it to other people's money.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If it's important to do pointless things because they're fun.
Yes.
Like, not everything needs an end goal.
Yeah, I think growing up, my parents always gave me the advice that you, if you can do what you love and make money off it, that's one thing, but you need to have like your day job and your hobby as separate things.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember my mother giving me exact monetary figures of how much I needed to earn for certain, to allow me to do hobbies, to have fun. Like, okay, you need to earn £18,000 and then you can have fun. Like, no.
What? No.
Also, you've met me. I'm never earning that.
£18,000.
Well,
some evergreen numbers there. But yeah, that's great to hear, though. I think it's interesting to see more people teaming up as well. Do you think that it's much more beneficial for everyone to get out there and collaborate, or do you think that it's possible to still make it solo these days?
Oh, you can absolutely make it solo. I think teaming up with people does multiple things, right? It gives you somebody to bounce your ideas off on a regular basis, which is, for us at least, vital.
That's how we work, yeah.
Like, I doubt we could do what we've done on our own.
Absolutely not. Like, I reckon I could write some one-page games on my own, but Spire and Heart are uniquely Chris and I.
Yeah, they don't exist without the other person.
No, it's like, collaborating is an interesting topic because I haven't collaborated a lot in the past. I've been on, like, back at the start of my career, I worked on a couple of group projects, and it left me with a bad taste in my mouth, I think, because everyone has to have the same level of devotion to it. Everyone has to have the same ideas going into it. Otherwise, you're going to feel shortchanged, and you're going to feel like, well, I'm doing all the work on this group project, and this other guy's making all the money, so it doesn't seem fair. Whereas Chris and I are broadly married. Like, we've been best mates
Going on 15 years now.
Yeah, we've been best mates since 2005. And working for the last 5 years together professionally.
Yeah, so common law partners.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Like, I do not intend at any point to sort of break off my relationship with Chris unless he does something reprehensible with that pony from earlier.
Got to keep that in the edit now.
Yeah. Oh, God. I have no intention of breaking off my relationship with Chris. I'm sure you'd be pleased to hear, mate.
Oh, thank you.
But it's like we have a level of trust with each other which is close to absolute. Or certainly my level of trust with Chris. I'm sure he keeps me at arm's length because he's smarter than I am. But in terms of collaborating, it's very difficult it's a bit like a jam session when you're playing music together. It has to work. You have to have that. You have to be able to work together and create something beautiful together, and it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to function. And I think that there's no shame in trying to collaborate or not being interested in collaborating with a certain person because you think your styles won't add up. Like, you can think they're the absolute best person in the world, but you don't want to work with them. And I think it's great to have people collaborating and establishing their and mixing together their styles. But I also think it's really important, especially if you're interested in, in inverted commas, success, to generate your own stuff that you can point at. To generate, say, I did this. This is mine. And a lot of the challenge I found, I wrote for Paranoia. I was one of the 3 people who wrote the new edition of Paranoia.
Oh, fantastic.
And about a lot of the fans didn't seem to think so, but I wrote because we took communists out of it. We changed them to terrorists because it was 2015, but they got a bit upset about that. Anyway, the point is, Mongoose hired me to write that, and the 3 of us, me, James Wallace, and Paul
Dean.
Thank you, Paul Dean wrote it. And then about a year and a half later, after it was published, Mongoose got in touch and said, "Hi there, we're interested in putting out some more Paranoia. Are you interested in writing for it?" "Oh yes, absolutely. I'd like to write for it some more, especially if it's just me doing a scenario or something." And they're like, "Yeah, can you send us over a writing sample as proof?" I'm like, "I wrote the fucking book."
That core book that you published.
I wrote that fucking core book. If there's anywhere that you read a rule that doesn't have an aside in it, that was me. Anything else was James Wallace. But
to be fair, that was an especially Paranoia move of them.
Yes, it was. It was Kafkaesque. And so I wrote back saying, "Yeah, I wrote the book, Matt." And like in Matt's defense, he has no idea what I did in that book. And if you look at, like, especially the way, like, a lot of, like, the big publishers do books like D&D, like White Wolf, who used to be certainly used to be a bigger publisher, it's by White Wolf, and there's maybe 30 writers involved in it, and you've got no clue who's done what on where. And I think that it can be really valuable being able to say, I wrote this is my thing.
It also serves you well to sort of keep your brain active in doing solo stuff, and thinking about your own individual projects as well. Like, even if they never come to fruition and get published or whatever, like, at least you're doing your own ideas independent of somebody else. And I think that becomes more important the more people you add. Like, I see a lot of projects for some really astonishing games like Emberwind and things like that, where there's like 9 people writing it. And that, I don't know how you'd do that. I don't know how you'd have 9 people collaborating regularly on a project.
I don't know how you'd have 9 people writing Emberwind, which should be balanced at least.
It is. It's a very good game.
That's the thing. I can't balance our fucking canon, let alone our rules.
Well, that's why we took the loose approach to canon that we did.
Yeah, very much so.
And also, we don't necessarily need balance in our games. We need fairness.
No, and Emberwind, I think, does need balance. Gorgeous game, though. I really want to have a go at it.
Oh, I need to look into it.
It's like Fourthy. So it's like Fourth Ed, but you know how everyone said, "Oh, Fourth Ed, it's just an MMO." Blah, blah, blah. What if Fourth Ed was actually an MMO? Emberwind.
Okay. Yeah.
It's good.
Fourth Ed was by far my favourite D&D edition.
Yeah.
And
should we get into Edition Wars? That could be fun.
No. This is not Edition Wars. This is just like explaining a point.
So it's more like an edition. It's just a one-sided edition fight. Like,
I play a lot of MMOs. I really like that kind of complicated hotkey combat and interlinked party synergy. Like, that's a lot of that came through in Unbound. And games like Emberwind just really scratch that itch for me, where you set up a party and you get it just right, and you're not min-maxing, you're just using the system. I love it. I love that sort of stuff.
I quite like it when you get to describe a cool kick you do.
Yes, you're very much at the cool kick end of the spectrum.
I like it if the rules for firing 2 guns at once don't make it any harder to hit. That's what I'm into, which is why you end up with the weird balance when Chris and I write games.
Yeah, it does oscillate wildly between just do the thing and maybe we should work out if they can do the thing.
Absolutely not. Do the thing! Kiss the NPC! Marry the NPC! Fall in love with the NPC and jump sideways holding 2 guns! Then apply 3d6 force damage and push the target back 1 square.
It's very clinical.
Yeah.
So I suppose, do you guys find that balance is maybe something that is well, I don't know if that's the right way of putting it. Like, I sometimes wonder if people worry too much about balance because they don't know enough about game design to worry about anything else.
Yeah, like balance is a really easy thing to look at because you can... Most people who play in tabletop role-playing games and write them have played video games and can see that in, like, say, Street Fighter, this character is just the best character because of these reasons. And balance is a very easy thing to notice when something is more powerful than the other thing. But balance only really truly matters when it's player versus player.
Yeah.
When both sides using exactly the same rules and it's a competition. Where if you've got a level playing field of all of the players do their thing very well, whether that be combat, unlocking doors, whatever, like social characters, as long as those people have time to shine and get that spotlight time, they are balanced because they're balanced between themselves. You don't need to be exactly equal to the challenge. It's not the way balance needs to work in role-playing games at all.
One thing which we try and do with our games in terms of balance is we're not interested in having it as a finely balanced machine because it's not PvP. So effectively, the GM has infinite resources, so go hog wild. But the thing which I used to find very frustrating when I played D&D or Pathfinder or something along those lines is that there's inevitably be one guy who just put more effort in than everyone else. And so I'd swan up, go, oh yeah, half elf Ranga? Sure. And then I'd have someone else pick up my feats to me, and then I'd turn up and try and kiss, every NPC, and that's fine. But some other guy has like, well, I'm playing a half ogre cleric of this particular god from a book, which means I do all this damage all day long, and I'm carrying around a gnome on my back who's my best friend, and that means I get +8 to hit. And it just meant that the fights, because D&D and Pathfinder are games about these big old fights, where like it can take 2-3 hours for a fight, especially in the older editions. It's like it leaves you feeling rather impotent, rather powerless if you don't have an optimized character in that way. And so I think what we've done with our games is try to make the numbers small. So if you are min-maxed, if you are more powerful than the other players, there's a cap, there's a ceiling.
It's a variance of like 3.
Yeah. And also like trying to give people a loose enough description, a loose enough universe where I want to do something other than just fight. I want to engage in this in a non-standard way. Brilliant. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, and you can have a character that's absolute trash in a fight.
Yeah.
But in all of the other scenes which take up an equal weight in the game, they're very, very good. And that means that you've got that spotlight time. Which is the same as being good in combat.
Yeah. Our invention of domains in Spire I'm quite proud of. In that domains are the sort of areas of the city or areas of expertise rather than skills, which mean that if you have the academia domain, then you roll an extra dice when you're looking up things in books. Of course you do. But you also roll an extra dice when you try to break into or have a fight in a library, because you're in the academia domain.
Or punch a librarian.
Or punch out a librarian. Or, I mean, if you're being a bit cheeky with it, hit someone with a book, why not? And it doesn't really matter. And what that does is say, like, I'm the librarian character, I'm the academic character. When we're in this zone, when the scene takes place in here, I can affect the game more reliably. I am more powerful here, and that functions as screen time. It functions as it gives you more authority. It lets you lead the scene in some way or be more reliable. And that, I think that for us is much more, that's much more interesting than coming up with something that's finely balanced. I think we'd much rather have something which was evocative and exciting.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, it's all about respecting your time playing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as you're having fun, it doesn't matter about balance.
Yeah.
Like, if in a lot of our games, especially Spire, like, you can set up a character to do a heinous amount of damage if you really want to. However, most people have got 4 hit points.
Yeah.
A sword, like a bad sword, will do D6.
I think the highest hit point thing we have in the game for like a person is 12. Which,
just a standard human is 12.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like a standard human is 3, and like someone with training and magic and plot armor is 12, and a starting level carrion priest could take him out in 2 turns.
Or just use one of the billion attacks that is basically an instant kill.
Yeah. Or much more interesting than that, blackmail them.
Yeah. Like
take over their business.
When we write up villains, as it were, like we don't really write up full monsters for Spire, but we make sure that to tell our writers and things like that all you can do is put in a load of levers. How can they be controlled? How can they be affected? And it's like you get people going, well, this is a very evil person. They run guns out of this area. Also, they've got 2 kids. They have a lot of investments in these companies, and if you set fire to this part of their house, everybody dies. And that, you don't even need to shoot them. You can just blackmail them, kidnap their kids. It's fine. Yeah.
And we didn't want to write a game where we had rules for kidnapping children.
No,
because that's a pretty grim story.
You don't mechanise that.
You don't mechanise that, but you certainly say, "Oh yeah, he's got 2 kids, by the way." And I think like the fun part of Spire is going, no, but players have that thought, and that's I always find that interesting.
It's about the implication.
Yes, absolutely, the implication, and you can, like, at no point do we say, "Hey, actually, don't do this," because it's your game. You can do what you want at your table, and. We were trying to come up with a balance between being edgy and being soft, and I'm pretty happy with where we've ended up, because it's very easy to get very edgy, very quickly.
Yeah,
we wanted to.
Like, we are not descriptively edgy at any point, if you know what I mean. Like, we are not suggesting that. Like, the best thing to do in this situation is to kidnap the children. Now they've got ballet practice at 4, and we don't do that, but. You are playing a game where you are desperate revolutionaries who are, honestly, sometimes the bad guys. And we give you a list of every lever you can pull that will affect them. And then the moral decision is on you.
Yeah, there's no rules for morality. I was always really upset with that in Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah.
Where they expressly tied your morality to a sort of Victorian sense of mental health. And if you were especially if you were of stout mind, you could do horrible things without going mad. And I think there might be more to it than that, VTM.
Yeah.
I think you might have got mental health a bit ass backwards.
I mean, I take a lot of pills every morning, and I'm not shooting anyone.
No. Well, have you shot any? Well, there's that pony again, isn't it? That's possibly why.
The pony's not been shot.
Okay. It's limping for a different reason.
It's the shoes I've got it in.
It sounds like when you guys approach Spire, it has a very specific set of themes that it's trying to accomplish. Do you feel like you had to establish those explicitly from the start, or is that something that you developed as you went?
No, partly we developed them as we went, but this comes back to working as part of a collaborative team, and the ridiculous levels of trust we have in each other.
Yeah.
We've gotten to the point now where we can look at something and go, that is Spire, that is not Spire. And it's a really weird place to be, but you kind of just get this intuition to it. You can just feel whether or not it's right and whether it fits.
It took us 1.5 years and 17 drafts. The game wasn't about revolution originally.
No.
I basically wanted to write a game about dark elves in cool sunglasses and hats in a very tall city. So I thought that would be neat.
It was Super Spies, wasn't it?
It was not super. It was espionage. It was like religious espionage. Was the vibe we were going for, and so like we had a load of like all the rites and all of the miracles are sort of. I wanted them to be normal miracles and normal miracles.
Just your average corner garden miracle.
Yeah, just the 10 a penny. No, non-espionage miracles adapted for espionage purposes. I thought that would be like spells or rituals or rites which did things which would have then been subsequently hacked. I thought that'd be really interesting. We had a load of. We used to have a skill called Black Bag, which was for dragging someone away in the middle of the night.
A specific skill for that.
Yeah. We reference it. Yeah, there was Fight and Black Bag.
Brought to you by the
skills.
Patriot module.
Yeah, and like Chris very wisely, I think 6 drafts in, said, "Yeah, but what happens when they win? What happens when they do the spy?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing. Oh, well, we need to change that, Grant." Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. and that's where the revolution came in. It was Chris's idea, despite me being like a much bigger lefty than Chris is, barely capitalist. He suggested revolution, and from that it really we really worked out what the game was about. It was a much easier sell, much easier to sort of understand what was going on in the game. It also means we didn't have to learn a lot about fieldcraft and spying because I don't know anything about that.
You can get bogged down in research.
You can research something for literally months.
Not even that.
No.
And it kind of worked really well with our ridiculously stupid design process. Because
it's ridiculously stupid. I say it's ridiculously inefficient.
Yeah, we use iterative design, so we basically throw out the entire game once every couple of weeks. and like when Grant says we're on design 17, that's not a joke.
No, we were on the 17th draft of the system.
We're on the 17th complete rewrite of the system.
I used D4s at one point.
Cards at one point. It was a D20 game. We chuck the entire thing, and then we go back to it and look and go, that bit was good, that bit was good, that bit was good. Keep those. Let's go forward with that.
When Chris says the entire thing, he's referring to the mechanics.
Yeah.
So all the numbers which power it, all the like the skill names, everything under the hood, we'd change that. But what became quite interesting is, and this was the first time we developed anything with a setting. So I'd done Goblin Quest before, which has sort of a very loose generic setting I put on top, and Unbound expressly has no setting in it, which is really hard to write. And it's really hard to write and be interesting. I could do you a boring settingless game very easily, but with Spire, we did these drafts. We kept writing rules around it, and then those rules expanded and changed the shape of the fiction. They changed the shape of what was going on. And so by the time we hit the 16th draft, the fiction was a shell which we were building an engine within. And that meant that when Chris says we can say that's Spire, that isn't Spire, I think you can point at a hat and say, yeah, that's someone would wear that in Spire. Oh yeah, no one would wear that in Spire. And so once you get that understanding, I think it took us about 9 months with Heart to get to that point, because we knew what rule system we were using, so it was a bit slightly sped up.
It was weird.
It was odd.
I don't like not writing a system along with the setting.
I love not writing a system.
Yeah.
Because it's taken us 18 months to do Hollows. And we're just now getting not only the core mechanic but also the setting.
Yeah,
still hunting monsters.
I think in that case it's personal preference, right? I don't like adapting rules, and especially other people's rules.
That's fair. Yeah, you don't like that. I'm not a huge fan myself.
To fit what you're doing, when you could make a system that is exactly tailor-made to you.
I suppose it's just being prepared to put in all the legwork.
Yeah, there are a load of really good PBTA games. The issue is that personally, I don't like PBTA. Which means that when I see that logo on there, I go, oh, never mind.
Ah, well.
And that's completely personal, but I see these games and go, oh, if only that had a system tailor-made for it. That would have been perfect for me. And so because of that, it drives me to want to make the system and the setting in tandem.
because you're using it to tell stories. You're building a machine to tell stories in.
Yeah, and quite often we're telling a specific story.
For sure.
You need the rules to match what you're doing perfectly, if possible.
I feel there is no point in a generic role-playing game.
No.
If I'm being honest with you, I think like generic as in generic's the wrong word. You're universal or settingless.
Like GURPS or Rift.
Yeah, pretty much. Unbound is settingless, but it's not genreless. It's pulp. It's very big, over the top action,
and also the setting generation is 80% of the game.
Yeah,
like you generate the setting together, you play through some sessions, and then because you're adults, you forget to actually play anymore, and you've had the good bit. Like the important thing is make a setting, have a couple of fights, everybody had a good time, we're done here.
Yeah.
Because I think like from what I've been exploring, like as a person going into creating myself, like is that a lot of mechanics are essentially just ways for you to exact tropes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And to encourage behavior and to set up scenes and to reward certain behaviors or discourage certain behaviors. It's like Chris refers to them as levers. It's like levers and friction is something which we've been working on. What's that really clever thing you say about story games? And
oh god, no, I'm going to try and remember it now. So, friction in games is where rules exist. So, if you're looking at Dungeon Dragons 5th edition, you roll a dice and then you got to look up your feats and your skills and all of this sort of stuff, and add that number together. And then roll the die, and then add all those numbers together, hit a target number, get over it, and then that's the story happening, right? That's the story moving forwards. So friction in games generates story. The dice rolls tell the story. But when you take that friction out of the game, it lets you tell your own story. So at extreme ends, you've got incredibly high friction games like GURPS, where there is, depending on which book you look into, a rule for it. Whatever you're doing, there's a rule for it somewhere. And then you've got incredibly low friction games like Belonging Outside Belonging and that sort of genre of games where they let you tell your own story rather than letting the dice decide which way the story goes. And we like to sit somewhere in the middle where we probably closer to the frictionless end. Where you're telling your own story, and then in a quiet moment, you need a dice roll to push a story in a certain way. And hopefully we have systems in place there to direct the story in the way that we want the story to go to keep it on theme in genre, rather than suddenly letting it spiral out into unicorns appearing and things like that, you know? Yeah. It tries to keep it on brand with the potential outcomes of the friction in the system.
I really like that expression, like the idea of the friction of the game. Yeah,
like it's not friction as a negative thing. It's friction as like universal force, right? Like
a quality.
Yeah,
well, like a lighter.
Yeah, like without friction, the lighter does not work.
Yeah,
it does not exist, and it's just that way of generating story with friction or allowing story without it,
and striking the balance between the two.
Yeah, and both ends of the spectrum are completely valid, and it's just where you fall on that kind of spectrum and what you enjoy, and what you enjoy writing as well.
For sure,
we could make a horribly rulesy thing. It would be awful.
Well, you could.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like if you and I made it, it would be terrible.
It wouldn't be great. No,
it would be boring.
Yeah, I don't want to do rules for falling and drowning. That's like a Shadowrun 5e has rules for treading water, and it's like
absolutely not.
It mainly takes place at an office block.
I remember seeing a rule in Shadowrun 5th edition that really encapsulated it for me, where if you have an explosion go off near a wall, you have to calculate the reflecting aftershock.
Yeah, the chunky salsa rule, yes,
and rules for stairs.
Yeah, like throwing a grenade into a room should be the most exciting thing you do all day.
It should not be a quick trip to the library and a scientific calculator.
I'm going to need the big calculator for this one, I think. Yeah.
Get the special abacus.
So just you know what, they're dead. Fine, okay.
Yeah,
they're dead. They die. A grenade went off in the same room as them. They're dead. It's fine.
And it's about working out where on that balance you want to do stuff.
Yeah.
It's like if a tree falls in a forest and you don't calculate the resistance of air force, is it really?
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Well, speaking as a story game designer, how much did you love that tree?
No, but actually, that's not a bad way of looking at it. Like, if you don't calculate the tree falling, does it matter? Well,
yeah.
At a high friction end, yes, because that tree might fall into another tree, which could then collapse.
Or maybe it opens up a hole where there's goblins underneath.
Or the other end, yes, that was a dryad's tree.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good way of putting it.
It can matter in different ways, or absolutely not. Nobody cares. What are you talking about?
That was an old dryad who fell over and can't get up.
Just on his back now, like a tortoise.
Oh, I'm all walking sticks.
That's where the female treants went.
That's what they fell over. They're just all out of shot.
They all got very old, and everything's upstairs, and they're not having it.
You can't get a stair lift at that size. What are you going to do?
Carve it out of wood?
No,
don't do it.
Well, I think if we're sticking to time, I've got maybe room for like one more question we can dip into.
Okay.
So as a new game designer, I've been kind of finding that in order to get started, I have to largely rely on deconstructing what I've already played in order to innovate, which can be like really limiting because not everything under the hood is like really apparent. Things like game loops and pillars of design and stuff. And I found that some game design resources, like video game design resources, can be applied, but I'm curious how you guys got to where you are. Did you learn by doing, or are there materials you've relied on to grow as designers?
Chris, what's a game loop?
Mate, he said something about pillars of design. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, palliative, wow.
Maybe I'm thinking a bit too formally.
No, that's fine. We didn't receive any formal training. No.
Yeah, I think that beautifully describes how we think, because we've been on other podcasts where people have used these like shorthand descriptions of game theory and stuff, and I'm sitting there going, I have no idea what you've just said.
Oh my god, I really wish I understood what that person said.
And I'm guessing. And that's because we learnt on our own. We very much learnt by doing. And like, you start to learn to take things apart. Like if you're doing a film studies course and you're looking at the way scenes are set, you start to learn that, you know, you can tell a story by lighting it right, by changing the color tone, the color temperature, by setting things left and right of stage. And you start to learn that when you make a lot of role-playing games, and play games in general. A lot of role-playing games. When you play, when you mentally create, whether that's video games, you read books, whatever, and you begin to subconsciously draw that into what you're doing, and that's how you create gameplay loops. Honestly, is you use that kind of anecdotal experience you've had through other games and through playing, even playing as a child with a stick or whatever, you know, that sort of level. You understand that there's a point you want to get to, and then you've got to try and mechanize, however that may be, a path to get there. And like 10 Candles is a classic for doing that very well with the candle mechanic, right? That's a very non-standard mechanic for games. But it is a mechanic, and it creates a really nice loop, a real good story loop that gets you to somewhere. And a lot of people get hung up on the D&D end of the spectrum, which is to use a video game analogy, the Diablo end of the spectrum, which is a treadmill, where you've got to get better to get better. You need a better sword so you can kill a better dragon, so you can get the better sword from the dragon. And you don't need to do that. All you do is pick the end point and work out how you get there.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't matter knowing what a core gameplay loop is as if you're already implementing it without realizing.
Exactly, yeah. Like, you it's one of those weird things of you know a lot more about this stuff than you think you do.
It's naming it is the challenge.
Yeah.
We don't have words for it. I would like to put forward that Chris and I, the first game that we ever designed together was a game called Zombie LARP, which was a LARP about zombies, because we didn't come up with any interesting names at that point. We've always struggled on names. And I had done one evening of World of Darkness Mage LARP, which I found like painfully dull. Chris had done about, I think, 2 hours of a Sunday morning fuck about with foam weapons LARP.
Yep.
And we were like, oh, we could do this better. And with the audacious confidence of mediocre white men, we stumbled headlong into game design. And I think because we are white men, no one was like, hey, fuck off. No one told us to stop.
It certainly helped.
It certainly helped, and we're playing life on easy mode. Aside from the fact that we're both mad, the world's pretty much set up for us, which is quite nice. So I think there's that in that we approached it and we figured we could do it because it can't be that hard, right? And it turns out it was hard, but we were given plenty of opportunities to mess up and learn along the way. But also, like, there wasn't. I think, like, when we were starting out back in 2007, I certainly wasn't aware of any resources which I could come up to in terms of gameplay loops. And, like, there certainly are game design books, but as you were saying earlier, the majority of them are aimed at video games. And most game design theory, most game design practice is done around video games. I've been contracted to work on video games, but it's very rare that I get contracted to work on a role-playing game or on a tabletop game, because the theories are, I think, perhaps easier to implement in video games. And true. So the literature, I'm personally not aware of anything. I'm sure there is stuff out there. I'm sure there are. I think like Kobold Press do some interesting stuff. I've not read it myself, and I think that being able to educate yourself and learn these things is valuable. But with the way that the industry is, like, it's such a new art form as well. Like we have been role playing for what, 45 years, 50 years.
Yeah.
In the way that we know it now. And you compare that to, like, it's similar to video games, except it makes much less money. So not as many people are interested in talking about it. There's not as many careers in it. But if you start comparing that to, say, film theory, we've got 100 years on that, and we're naming these things, we're understanding these things. We don't really have a central authority in the way that a lot of disciplines have, and so as Chris was saying, there's, at this point in the industry, there is no substitute for experience.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I'd like to point out there, you say there's no central authority. We also don't have criticism.
No, we don't.
It does not exist in the role-playing space. You have reviewers, sure. You have a load of people on YouTube and in various other spaces reviewing books. This is a good book, you should buy this. Mm-hmm. But we do not have art criticism.
No.
We do not have deconstruction. We do not have... Certainly we don't have competition in that space. There aren't multiple viewpoints that are accepted.
Every time I have tried to do criticism, I have been shouted down. Now, that's not criticism in terms of like, oh, I think this person's politics are abhorrent and also they've written a role-playing game. But I think this role-playing game is bad for these reasons, and I'm going to outline them. No, it's not. I can't do that because I make role-playing games. Everyone who's in the industry makes role-playing games. It's not like there are a wide variety of people who enjoy film and don't make films but write about it, and they are respected as film critics because they're well regarded in the medium, and the same goes for video games journalists, except slightly less because they're more online.
Sure.
And anyone who's interested enough in tabletop games to do informed criticism on them makes them, which means they've got skin in the game, which means they can't afford to start burning bridges, they can't afford to upset people. And it's sad because we are making art. we are making something like especially now. I'm not going to say that Honey Heist has great artistic merit, but like Hearts is. There's a lot of stuff in there which Chris and I are talking about. There's a lot of artifice around that, about death and about passion and about being trapped indoors for a fucking year. There's a lot of stuff we're talking about, but you can't engage in that critically in a way which past a handful of people on YouTube who are talking about this stuff intelligently, because they can't afford to be seen as controversial or what have you in the wrong direction, which is sad.
Yeah, and obviously, like, with the current social media climate, it's very easy to get, I suppose, like, labelled as, like, just being part of the cancel culture or something, or...
It's strange, yeah. I'm kind of into the cancel culture because it's accountability. And finally, a lot of people who are getting away with stuff are now being like, actually, no, fuck you, we won't buy your stuff anymore.
For sure. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but people use it to dismiss stuff very easily.
Absolutely, and like I did a couple of threads on things, and then I found a tweet on Twitter referring to me as that guy who does horrible threads about things. I'm not interested in him anymore. It's like, I did 2 things in a fortnight.
And also, like, those things were like this point because this reason, and this is why I think this. Yeah. It wasn't just like, nah, fuck this person.
I was punching down. I was like, I've got 11,000 followers now on Twitter, so I can't have an opinion.
But the point is, the RPGs really need independent criticism.
Yeah.
People who can say, you know what, this has problems here. It's good for these reasons. This is very clever. This is awful. And it needs that viewpoint to help push it further forwards. And it's very hard to get.
The barrier to entry and creation is so low, especially now. It is so easy to make a game and publish it.
Which is a good thing, overall.
Absolutely. 100%.
But it's very hard to make an informed decision about a game because there's 10,000 games.
And so much of it relies on your group as well, you know.
Yeah.
And like, there's the eternal discussion, like, well, is the play the game or is the book the game? And is it somewhere in between?
It's such a difficult area.
So like it's hard to think of an art form it's hard to think of an art form which ends up more filtered for the end user. It's like if they released the Avengers and then it's not that you had to watch it on your own little TV screen at home with your bad TV speakers, but more that your friend Steve describes it to you
as they remember it.
As they remember it, which is how I watch a lot of Avengers films. I just get someone to describe them to me because it's more interesting than watching the film. But that's the market we're working in. That's like, it's like we'll write something, we'll put our heart and soul into something, and then we have to hope that whoever's in charge of it is also good.
And conversely, that works well for a lot of things, because even if you think your game is bad, you shouldn't, because you made it.
Definitely don't say it's bad.
Somebody's going to like it. There's going to be a group out there for it. Because every group is different and everybody's going to interpret it differently, there is an audience for everything. You just have to find the audience and then write for them.
Yeah, keep throwing spaghetti at the wall. That's a weird phrase. I always just ate it to see if it was ready rather than hucking it at a wall.
Ideally.
Yeah.
It's from a different time. Afford to waste produce.
When I had enough room and a flat to throw spaghetti.
What's all this stuff about swinging cats around? I don't get it.
I know. Who can afford to own a cat?
Especially a swingable cat. In this economy?
Well, I think that is a brilliant point to end on with some very poignant commentary.
Cat violence.
Yeah, sums up the interview beautifully, I think.
But yeah, thank you again for joining us. I mean, it's been a very eye-opening conversation. I definitely learned something from speaking to both of you. It's much appreciated.
Good.
Glad we could help. I hope it's nice to just talk shop for an hour.
Yeah.
That's how I managed to lure Chris onto the show, because pretty much every other podcast we're on, there has to be some sort of couching about like, oh, okay, so one of the things about designing a role-playing game is when you and like we're able to say, okay, so 2d6 minus 4, and we're able to just go straight into shop, because I listened to the other episodes on your podcast, and it's like, no, it's just talking about this from a professional perspective, and it's quite nice to have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, thank you for checking out the stuff. Like, I think it's great to have this kind of discourse, because I don't see it anywhere else, so I mean, I need to learn, so it's an excuse to get that as well.
Well, best of luck for future, and indeed to you, listener, best of luck for your future projects. And if you come at the king, you best not miss.
Please don't come for the king.
Yeah, we're really tired. Please. I mean, I guess that would probably be free legal.
Obviously.
In which case, go for the king. That's fine. Weaken the king, and then we will attack. Throw your bodies on the king.
If you're gonna roll to hit, you better crit.
There we go. That's nice. Let's end it there.
And end it there I did. Thanks again to Grant and Chris for joining us and offering their insights. If you want to check out Spire, Heart, or any of Grant, Chris, and Minerva's work, then head on over to Rowan, Rook, and Decard.com, or check out the links in the description. Join us next week when we'll be talking to Satine Phoenix about her new Kickstarter book, Sirens, Battle of the Bards. We'll be discussing the logistics that go into creating a collaborative book with tons of other creators, and just how she went about raising the bar for how much creative energy can go into one project. And of course, last but not least, thank you for making it to the end, and until the next adventure, stay safe.